So, we are recording. This is Stephen Palmer, and I am with Hank. I'm going to screw up your last name.
Moscicki.
Moscicki.
Yeah.
And today is August 8th, 2018, and we're in Hank's apartment in Bay Ridge,
right.
Brooklyn. I've never been out here before, but it's nice to come out and see that there's space.
It's very nice.
outside of the
nice
city.
Out here.
And we're here to talk today, do an interview for the Stonewall Oral History Project. So Hank, as I mentioned, we'll start out with sort of a modified oral history, maybe 10 minutes, where you were born, what year, your family, a little religion, politics, and then sexual awareness. Take it.
Well, I was born in this neighborhood. I'm from this neighborhood. I went to grammar school in this neighborhood, St. Ephraim's Grammar School. I went to high school in this neighborhood, Severian High School. And my mother and my two brothers have died, unfortunately. My father lives someplace out on Long Island. We haven't talked in 40 years, so I have no idea where he is. No big deal. Roman Catholic, libertarian, Randist objectivist. How's that for a Roman Catholic? Randian objectivist.
Randian objectivist.
Yes, I got thrown out of high school for that one. And I discovered I was gay very young. I was very attracted to men, older boys, and I chased after older boys.
Older boys or altar boys?
Older boys. I was in the choir at St. Ephraim's Parish. You didn't talk to altar boys. It's like we were the entertainment, they were the service.
Keep going. I'm just gonna check the levels one more time, and then feel free of this.
I was, like I said, I was attracted to boys at a very young age. Never been attracted to women. And I never had a problem with it. I never thought, there was never any big deal about coming out. It was just a matter of putting a name to what I was and going, okay, run with it.
Let's hold it there for 1 second. You were talking about being attracted to
boys. Yes. And I never had a problem with I never knew what to call it until years later. And when I really figured out what it was, I figured, okay, not a big deal.
How old were you, do you think you were when you started noticing you were attracted to boys?
God, 6.
6 years old?
Six, yeah. Yeah. I had a crush on a 5th grader. A redhead, a junior, a flaming redhead. Oh, God, was he hot. I still have a thing for redheads because of that. It's my one big fetish, is redheads because of this guy. And he didn't know me from Adam. I could never even go up to him. He was just, he's gorgeous. I want that. But yeah, that's...
How did your family notice? Did your mom or...
No, I was very discreet. I was never too flamboyant. Although I did do a Betty Davis imitation with one of my grandmother's dresses and her Red Cross shoes, doing Peter, 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 which she never said, by the way. But no, that's no. I eventually told my grandmother. She was cool with it. My grandparents are from Poland. And they were very liberal people. They had seen a lot of people being abused. They both grew up in the Pale. They weren't Jewish, but that area that they grew up in was in the Pale, which is, do you know what the Pale is?
No.
That's where the Russians exiled all the Russian Jews to. It's just inside the Polish border across from Russia. And it's Bialystok and all those villages around there in the northeastern part of Poland. And that's where both my grandparents were from, although they didn't meet until they came here. So as a result of the abuse that they saw people getting, they became very tolerant people here. So my grandmother and I had no secrets. So finally one day I said, Grandma, I gotta tell you, I don't like girls, I like boys. And she looked at me for a minute and she said, good, as long as you like somebody. Now this is a Victorian woman.
What year was this?
It was probably 1966, 65.
And how old were you then?
About 15, 16.
You were born in, I'm sorry,
I was born 1949.
1949. So you're about 16, 17 years old.
Yeah. My father never found out. It's one of my best memories. My father never found out until he saw me on television with Gay Activist Alliance the day that we took over Harper's Magazine, because they published a very nasty article about gay people and gay liberation, refused to allow anybody to publish a rebuttal. So we figured, well, screw you. Gay Activist Alliance is going to go in and take over Harper's Magazine. We liberated the offices. I liberated Midge Dexter's office personally. So the news crew showed up, and that night my father was watching Channel 5 News, and there I was on the news. Well, the minute the news clip stopped, my phone started to ring. And it was my father. Says, how dare you? My father was a captain in the New York City Fire Department. You know, they've got this macho thing. As a matter of fact, Jim Owls, the president of Gay Activist Alliance, was beaten up by the head of the Firemen's Union at the Gridiron Dinner. Did you ever hear that? Yeah. One year, I forget what year it was. I think it was like 71. Jim Owls and a bunch of people went to the Gridiron Dinner to demonstrate. They bought tickets. They were, and they were like jacket and tie, and they started to demonstrate in the middle of the dinner. And the head of the firefighters union, not the officers union, but the regular firefighters union, beat the crap out of Jim Owls. I mean, he looked terrible, just beaten to a pulp. And of course, none of these great liberals running the city did a goddamn thing to stop it until the police pulled them off. So anyway, my father said, how dare you? How dare you? Don't even use that name. I said, it's as much my name as your name. And, and he's not a pleasant person. Eventually he went too far, and I haven't talked to him in 40 years as a result.
Since the late 70s?
Early 80s.
Early 80s.
Yeah, very early 80s, like 81 or so. He's alienated everybody, so it's no big deal. He's a very unpleasant, unhappy man. And he did his best to make me unpleasant and unhappy, and I have a sense of humor which got me through being his son.
The best medicine?
I used to make up little ditties about him. Like, you're a cranky doodle dandy. And he would just be so amazed that I would have the nerve to do it. Nothing would happen.
Do you remember the whole song?
No, it was just the phrase.
Oh, that's hysterical.
Just the phrase. You're a cranky doodle, and he would just walk away. But no, he's universally detested. You know the old saying, to know him is to loathe him. It was written for him.
It was written for your dad.
He's loathed by everybody. He's alienated what few friends he had. He's alienated all his cousins, all their kids. The last person in the family who had anything to do with him was my cousin Ken, and finally my cousin Ken had it up to here. And so, anyway,
let's back up a little bit.
Yes.
Okay. You were brought up Roman Catholic.
Yes.
Did you have any sense of guilt or
about
guilt, cardinal sin?
No, guilt has never been my métier. I was in the Boy Scouts too. No, I've never felt guilty. Ever. No. It's I've always figured, well, it's between me and God. I don't care what the church says, it's between me and God, and He can let me know what happens. That's all. I had 8 years of nuns. Tough. I mean, these were, in grammar school, these are the type of nuns that the Pope would drop behind enemy lines and they would garrote the enemy with rosary beads. I mean, tough nuns. And in high school, I had Severian brothers who, when they, not being religious brothers, act as enforcers for the mafia. I mean, seriously, I mean, I had thugs teaching me in high school. It was not a pleasant experience. Did you know John Calendo, or of John Calendo? He's in the West Coast. He's gay. He's a writer. We went to high school together. John Calendo was my gay role model in high school. He didn't give a crap. He was the most flamboyant person you'd ever meet in a Catholic high school. He used to wear saddle shoes and plaid pants, and his tagline was, "Oh, Lucille Ball, much henna," you know. It's
much henna.
Henna. I did have a gay role model growing up. My Aunt Jenny, my father's older sister, had a dancing partner during World War II when all the guys were in the army. Well, she had Joe Conti. Joe Conti was very gay, which is why he was never in the army. He was a family friend. You know, if there was a big family do, he was invited. He'd be there. And I knew there was something about Joe and I, this is when I was very young, there was something about Joe and I that was a lot alike, but I could never quite figure it out. I just took a liking to him like that. And it wasn't until years later I figured, he's gay as a goose. And so am I. That's the attraction. That's why I liked him so much. As a matter of fact, Joe had a place on Cherry Grove. He was Miss Fire Island several years in a row. He used to work in the flower shop. You know, when you get off the ferry in Cherry Grove, you know where the
just to the left there, that little.
Yeah, you know where the real estate office is now.
Yeah.
That used to be the flower shop.
Yeah.
And Joe worked at that flower shop for years and years and years and years during the summer. And he was built like a weeble. He's
like Weebles Wobble, but they don't fall down.
Exactly. He had this huge. I mean, he wasn't a fat man. He was just built like a weeble. He had this enormous kettle bottom. And he was the sweetest guy. He really was. But that was my gay role model, although I didn't know it until years later.
You graduated high school in 67?
66.
66?
I skipped a year or so.
You referred to yourself as a libertarian before.
Yeah.
What was your sense of politics, the civil rights movement, Vietnam, any of that stuff at that time?
At that time, there was no libertarian movement. You were either Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative. That was it. So I belonged to a conservative club. I was a member of Young Americans for Freedom. You ever hear that?
Yes.
Yeah, I was
the YAF.
Yes, exactly. I was an officer in YAF, New York State YAF. We had a local branch here in Bay Ridge. But the New York State organization was very libertarian oriented. Although, you know, there was no separate libertarian movement. That didn't happen until '69 when there was a split at the YAF convention in St. Louis. God, what a hole. Between the traditional conservatives and the libertarians. That after '69, there was actually a free libertarian movement.
How did you view civil rights, black civil rights in the '60s?
It was, initially, I found it confusing because I never expected that people were being treated that way. I mean, I grew up in Bay Ridge. Bay Ridge still is lily white, except now we have a lot of Arabs and living in here. But this neighborhood, when I was growing up in this neighborhood, you were Irish, Italian, or Norwegian. That was it. Yeah. The first black person I had ever had any contact with was the one black student at Severian High School. I had never talked with a black person until I went to high school. And I was amazed that people were being treated that way, particularly in the light of the way my grandparents told me that the way they were treated in their own country, in Poland, by the Russians, and how the Jews were treated by the Russians and other Poles. You know, it's yeah, no. Do you remember there was? Do you remember the choosing game, eeny, meeny, miny, mo?
Catch up.
N-word by the toe. Well, my grandmother heard me say that once. That was the only time she ever gave me a swat on the bottom. She said, "That's a terrible word to say about people you don't know." And it makes you think. And I think it was like 9 at the time. It makes you think.
What do you think made you... What was conservative about you in those teenage years?
I loathed socialism and communism. Loathed it with a passion unbeknownst to mankind. I mean, it was just... my family was between the communists and the Nazis. Our family in Poland was wiped out. My grandfather had 9 brothers. None of them survived the war, and neither did their families. And they were living in the Russian part of Poland. So, you know, I loathed communism. Loathed it. Just... That's what attracted me about the conservative movement was a hatred. It's the only time I could say I've hated anything is communism and socialism.
How did you feel about Vietnam?
I thought it was a huge mistake, and so did a lot of other young conservative people.
How come?
What were we doing there?
Stopping communism, the domino effect.
Well, how did that work out? You're either going to do it the right way, or you're not going to do it. You see, the thing is that the war was not run by the military. It was run by the politicians, like McNamara. He went to his grave with the blood of 60,000 boys on his hands.
And how many Vietnamese?
And how many of both North and South? Exactly. No, disgusting.
Did you protest the war?
No. I felt it would undermine the people who were fighting, the morale of the people who were fighting, and it did. All those demonstrations, and when they came home, and the way they were treated by, I guess they were the Antifa of their day. You know, the way they were spit on. Boys coming back from Vietnam was spit on. Literally. I mean, this is not a no.
So you didn't were you sympathetic to ending the war?
Oh yeah, we should have gotten out. We should have gotten out, and I loathed Lyndon Johnson for what he allowed McNamara and his friends to do. You know, I was never a big Democrat friend.
Could you just
louder?
Speak louder.
Sure, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I get a bit throaty.
It's all right. It's okay. Just to make sure.
As a matter of fact, I need water.
Okay, let me put this on hold. And we're back on. So, I'm just going to back up a little bit. You loathed communism, and we're talking about the war, which, though you were against it, you felt demonstrating undermined.
I felt it would be unpatriotic. I really did. And don't get me wrong, I loathed a lot of Republicans as much as I loathed communists. So I think my proudest political day is day I destroyed one of Jacob Javits's political rallies on Wall Street. I was working there during the summer, and I guess it was, I don't know what year it was. It was probably like 1968 or 69, 67. I'm not sure. He's running for re-election. He had this huge rally on Wall Street, and he's going, oh, and I'm a faithful Republican, have been all my life. And then they asked for questions, and they figured, oh, kid raised his hand. Let's see what the kid's got to say. And I said, well, you call yourself a faithful Republican. How come there were more Democrats that supported Barry Goldwater in '64 than you did? And the whole crowd turned on him. I'm so proud of that.
It was a good moment.
Yeah, it was a really good moment.
In 1966, 67 was the beginning of the counterculture, the hippie movement.
Yeah.
How did you view that? Let me just do one more thing with the. Go ahead.
How did I feel about the counterculture? I thought, in a lot of ways, it was excessive. Although eventually, I thought the drug parts was great.
Do you remember when the Haight-Ashbury was going on?
Oh, sure. God, yeah. That was like hippie Washington D.C. That I thought it was very sweet and terribly impractical. Not very realistic and sort of, blissed out, sort of a secular version of blissed out born again Christians. And I thought, okay, fine, but it's silly. But I found a lot of their political, stances unacceptable. That whole eat the rich mentality.
I'm thinking that's more like the yippies.
It permeated the entire movement. I mean, it's like, and the hippie movement didn't last long. It really didn't. After 1969, after that so-called Summer of Love, it was too commercialized. After that, it just became a lifestyle. After I got out of school, I was not really ready. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. I had majored in economics. Who the hell wants to work in economics? I found a place in Queens, and I started, going into the Village on weekends. Mm-hmm. Yay, Village! And I discovered the Far West Village, and I discovered real gay life.
What year is this about now?
It was 1967, 68. During the summer, when I was in college, I would go into the West Village on weekends.
And where were you at college?
Southampton. It's part of LIU, or it was. Mm-hmm. My whole life seemed to have disappeared behind me, like someone's rolled it up behind me. Places I worked on don't exist anymore. Schools I went to don't exist anymore. It's like, I'm next.
The Great Disappearing Act.
Yeah, it's like they're going to roll me up at the sidewalk. Anyway, and finally I've been trying to figure this out, but I met this older gay guy by the name of Frank Thompson. He owned an art gallery on Cornelia Street in the Village. And I was living in Forest Hills at the time. Oh God, Forest Hills, how did I ever wind up there? It took me a half hour to get to the subway from my apartment, walking down 108th Street to Queens Boulevard. Not fun. But Frank Thompson had an apartment he wanted to sublet. And he would even be willing to take money off the rent if I worked in his gallery a couple of days a week, which I did. And I became a citizen of Greenwich Village, employed by an old beatnik, a very gay old beatnik, who introduced me to the locals. Across the street was a Cafe Chino.
Cafe Chino?
Cafe Chino, Joe Chino. it was the first off-Broadway theater. It was on. Bernadette Peters got a start in the Cafe Chino. What's that Dames at Sea?
I don't know.
That Broadway show she was in that originally showed that was originally at the Cafe Chino. It was a very exciting period, and Frank, and at that point I was also working for the Mattachine Society, volunteering at the Mattachine Society. Everybody else was like 40 years older than I was, but it was like, they think, oh my God, we got new blood. Let me backtrack. I used to read everything I could get my hands on, and I found this book called a magazine called Psychology. And 1 month, they did a synopsis of a book called The Boys from Boise. And it was a recounting of how the city fathers in Boise, Idaho, had decided that they were going to drive faggot perverts out of their city. And they proceeded to make life miserable for anybody who they thought was gay. Resulted in lost jobs, broken marriages, suicides, jail terms. I thought that was so fucking outrageous that would happen in this country. Talk about naive. I thought that was so outrageous that would happen in this country that when I heard about the Mattachine Society, I contacted them and asked, would they be willing to come just to school and give a talk in one of my classes? And I said, sociology class, of course. Sociology, the cover up for bringing gay people into school. And Bob Mill, who was the vice president of the Mattachine Society, said that he would be glad to come, and he came. And we became friends after that, and I started to volunteer at the Mattachine Society.
How did you learn about the Mattachine Society?
I don't remember. I read the name someplace and what it was, and it just stuck. And then when I read this book, then I read the synopsis of The Boys from Boise, it came back to me, and that's when I contacted them.
You had mentioned a little bit earlier an old gay beatnik.
That's Frank Thompson.
Frank Thompson. Was he part of Mattachine?
No.
So that wasn't a potential introduction.
No. Frank was do you know what a remittance man is?
No.
It's a very old term. It's very prevalent in wealthy English families, where they would pay the black sheep of the family to never come home again. Well, Frank was an American remittance man. His family is very wealthy. They owned hundreds of thousands of acres of orange trees in Florida. And they paid him never to come home again. So I don't know how Frank did eventually join Gay Activist Alliance along with me. See, I was at the Mattachine Society one night answering phones, and Jim Owls and Marty Robinson and Tom Dewar and a couple of other people came in to talk to the people of the Mattachine Society to let them know that they were forming this new organization that they're going to call Gay Activist Alliance, and would they be interested in working with them. Well, the Mattachine Society was moribund, I'll tell you. They were not an activist organization. They were more for informational. They weren't. You have to remember that the Mattachine Society was formed back in the late 40s. So that's not exactly a let's go out and be openly gay in the street kind of period. And it was what I was looking for.
How? What about it attracted you to it?
The activism, the political activism. Because I've been on political demonstrations for conservatives. I was not shy about going out and like standing on a street corner and yelling at people to get petitions signed and that kind of thing. So, the training was already there. It was just a matter of transferring those skills to gay rights.
By the time you got to Mattachine, you feel the organization's peak days were over?
Well, I don't know if they ever had peak days. They were there. Actually, no, that's not fair. They did have one public demonstration in their entire actually two in their entire existence. One 4th of July, they went to Philadelphia and demonstrated in front of Independence Hall for gay rights. And this was early 60s. Good on them. I mean, you got to give them credit for guts.
Was Barbara Giddens?
Yeah, she was in that demonstration. I was trying to remember her name. Barbara Giddens, and there's another woman whose name just came to me that I've been trying to remember, Natalie Raquel. She worked with Gay Activist Alliance. There were never enough women with Gay Activist Alliance. I don't know why women never wanted to come and play with us, but they didn't.
But with Mattachine, though, it resonated with you somehow.
It was. I thought you got gutsy. It was a gutsy thing to have a homosexual, and it wasn't gay. It was homosexual. To have a homosexual organization have a public office. Now their office was right on the southwestern corner of 72nd Street and West End Avenue. One of those doctor's offices setups. Yeah, and right there on the corner, a little plaque on a bronze plaque next to the door, Mattachine Society. Nobody knew what the hell Mattachine Society was, which is why they were able to put it up. But that's where they were. Eventually, they moved down to the office in the same. They tried opening up an office on Christopher Street in the Village. I guess it was 1971 or two. Next, in fact, in the same building as the Lion's Head. They're upstairs from the Lion's Head on the parlor floor. And that was open for like 2 years, and then the organization just evaporated.
I'm wondering what the utility of Mattachine was post Stonewall with all the new, younger, gay activists.
They were never able to integrate themselves into what was going on because that's not where their heads were. This publicly, public temper tantrum kind of thing was not what they were doing. I don't know why, but we were making it easier for them.
And let me tell you a story while you're getting a sip of water. Ellen Brody, who was part of the Gay Liberation Front, remembers at the time looking down on like the Daughters of Bilitis and the Mattachine and demonstrating, because they're wearing nice skirts with pantyhose, and the men had to wear suits and so
ties,
on. Yeah. And she just thought, oh look, they're begging for acceptance.
They were.
But in retrospect, of course, as somebody who's 72 now and recognizing that her heavy-duty activism was actually standing on the shoulders of the people who came before, and now she looks back at Barbara Giddens and those folks and thinks how brave they were.
They were incredibly brave. I mean, can you imagine running the Mattachine Society in Joe McCarthy's America, despite the fact that, it was rumored that Joe McCarthy and Roy Cohn were having an affair?
Oh, God.
You didn't know that?
No.
Oh, yeah. This is the big deal, was that Roy Cohn and Joe McCarthy were supposedly banging each other.
Yuck.
Yeah. Ugh. With the Thomas, I hope.
When you were, did you work at the 72nd Street Mattachine or the one down?
72nd. I worked at both.
And what did you do at Mattachine?
Well, I essentially opened mail, kept the library looking good, and answering phones.
What kind of mail did you get at Mattachine?
Hate mail, junk mail.
Any help me mail?
No, that usually came over the phone.
Do you remember any of the phone calls?
Yeah, well, not actually one of the visits. Became my best friend.
Tell me about that.
I was working at the Mattachine. I was working at the Mattachine Society. It was, I guess, midweek, and this guy came in wearing an obvious wig, a real toupee, full head toupee, and I said, "Hi, can I help you?" And he goes, "I think I'm gay. What do I do?" I said, "Well, have you ever been to the West Village?" He said, "Not really. I've gone to the art show in Washington Square Park." I said, "No." I said, "Have you ever been to the Far West Village?" Now, this is 1968. He said, "No." So I said, "Well, the office is closing in a little while. Go, hang out in the library, look at some books, and I'll take you down to the village." Well, Gil Kessler, after that day, Gil Kessler and I have been partners in crime for 50 years.
Gil Kessler?
Gil Kessler, yeah.
How old was he when you met him?
He was 13 years older than I was. So I was I was like 19. He was like...
In his early 30s.
1929, yeah. He was in his early 30s.
Did he live in the city? Or?
Yeah, he lived in Flatbush. He was a math teacher at that city high school.
So did you bring him down to the village?
Yeah, he was amazed. He was tickled pink. He said, and after that we've been very good friends. Unfortunately he's dying now. He's has Parkinson's disease. He's 83. He has Parkinson's, and I'm going to miss him.
Yeah,
terribly, particularly since my other long-term friend died last week.
Also part of that time, or?
No, a little afterwards, but from the 70s.
Uh-huh.
It's Michael Horowitz. Nice man. Fortunately, it was very quick. Terminal pancreatic cancer, gone in a month.
It's an ugly one. My therapist, Michael Chernoff, died of pancreatic cancer. He was a big, well-known therapist in the gay community for years and years. Gil Kessler, where does he live now?
Yeah, he lives in the village. He moved to the village.
When was the last time you saw him?
Oh, well, he and his boyfriend came. I've got his picture in the living room. He and his boy. I also introduced him to S&M, as a matter of fact, he became so involved is that for years he was chairman of Gay Men's S&M Activists, GMSMA. He used to meet at the center for years. He's got a worldwide reputation as a master. He's had invitations to go teach in Amsterdam. Anyway, and I blame it on me. Anyway, Gil doesn't do anything halfway. I mean, when he gets into something, he just gets into something completely. Anyway, last time I saw him was in the spring. Mm-hmm. They came over. Mm-hmm. And every time I see him, he looks frailer and frailer and frailer.
So Gil Kessler met at Mattachine, and you turned him onto the village, and I do want to get your story about S&M activism.
I was never an S&M activist. I was a practitioner, but not an activist.
All right, we'll talk about the practitioner part. So we're back in Greenwich Village in the late 60s. You're working at Mattachine.
Right.
What bars did you go to then?
Julius. God, it was Julius. Oh, and there was a place on 10th Street. I don't even remember the name. God. It was an elephant's graveyard, but they made great... You know what an elephant's graveyard is? That's where old Queen's going to die. But they had a great bartender who made great cocktails. I'm trying to remember the name of the place, and I can't. We used to go there. We used to go to the baths. Yay, baths.
There's a bar called Peter Rabbit. You remember?
Yeah, that was on. I think that was on Greenwich and Christopher, or Washington and Christopher. I think. No. I was. Oh, the Gold Bug.
The Gold Bug.
The Gold Bug. That was on West 3rd Street. It's now, the building is now an NYU frat house. But there was this great dancing bar down in the basement called the Gold Bug. Wonderful, wonderful place. Very nice. Great place to go and dance.
So, if you could go back, I'm sorry about
That's
that,
all right.
and talk about how you learned about Stonewall.
Oh, well, I was at a house party. It was being run by some people I knew, older people I knew. They took me under their wing from the John Birch Society. This was when I was out in school in Southampton. And we were watching the news, and the news came on about the riots at the Stonewall bar. And they were just horrified, and I was just tickled pink.
But you kept it under wraps.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like they're older people. I mean, this is like heart attack material here. You don't want to upset them too much. And besides, they were very nice to me. They really were. And so, you didn't want to abuse the hospitality. But I was just tickled pink that somebody actually did something, not just talked, or not just wrote a paper, or not just looked sad about what happened to them, but they actually stood up for themselves and did something. I was overjoyed. I mean, I knew what the people at the Mattachine Society were going to say, or some of them. You can't do that. Someone's gonna get hurt. Well, you can't break an egg. To be trite, you can't make an omelet without breaking eggs. Well, you can't start any kind of revolution without spilling a little blood. And it happened. And I don't. I wish I had asked how Jim Owls and the other guys came together. I never did. I don't know why. But to this day, I always wished I asked, how did you guys meet? But they got together and they sat down and they formed a plan. We to start an organization, an activist organization, not a passive organization like Mattachine, not a passive organization like the Mattachine Society or the Daughters of Bilitis, which at that point that was it. And they came to the Mattachine Society, and they didn't recruit anybody there except me. We had meetings at a Church of Holy Apostles up on 28th and 10th. We used to meet there every week. And eventually, more and more. Let's see, my membership. Gay Activist Alliance membership card was number 16. I wish I still had it. That and my T-shirt with the lambda on it. I wish I still had that too.
Oh, the lambda sign.
Yeah. Anyway, eventually the meetings got so big that we had to look for someplace else. And Jim and Marty and our treasurer, whose name I will not use because I understand he's married now to a woman.
She probably knows. These are very different days.
No, I don't think so. Because if anything had, his father was a jeweler. He was in his father's jewelry business, and I understand a rather large jewelry business. And his father was not a tolerant person. Anyway, although by now, who knows? He could be running the business now, for all I know. But they somehow were able to get rent from the city an old firehouse on oh my God, what's the street? Worcester, thank you. On Worcester Street, 99 Worcester Street. It's now some fashion designer's dump.
Naturally.
Ugh. Anyway, it was a whole building. It was like the apparatus floor where they used to park the fire trucks. Yeah, the pole was still there if we wanted to use it. There was, and 2 floors of offices over that. It was perfect. And so we rented it from the city, and we moved in, we renovated, and we painted I was in charge of painting the front of the firehouse red. Because it was like scabrous. It was just, hadn't been used in years and years and years. And so we took it over. And we used to have meetings every Thursday, or Wednesday? Wednesday nights were the meetings, I believe. And we had meetings there on every Wednesday. And then eventually they started the dances on Saturday to give people an alternative not to go to the mafia bars. And we had hundreds of people showing up to dance. And I think admission was what? $1?
$1 admission?
Yeah. Admission was $1, and soda was like 50 cents. You know, we're not out to make a fortune, but you know, it helped us pay the rent and expenses, and it was great, and those dances were very well attended every week. We really cut into the mob's bar business. It was wonderful.
Did the mob come after you for that?
No. At that point, because it was becoming more acceptable, the police weren't going to be raiding the bars anymore. So there was no need to have mob protection. So they sort of got forced out. It's the same argument that they're making with drugs. You know, if you legalize drugs, you know, the criminals, there's no reason for the criminals to be in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Arthur Bell, who was the Michael Musto's forerunner, I guess godmother at the Voice, was a member of Gay Activist Alliance. He and Arthur Evans were lovers. Remember the picture you saw of the hippies? Okay, well, Arthur Evans was the one on the right with the headband and the beard. They were lovers. It was like the odd couple. I could never understand what the two of them were doing together. It was like 2 entirely different worlds there. Until one night they broke up in the middle of a Gay Activist Alliance meeting when Arthur Evans, the hippie, was on the podium and then just took the loudspeakers and broke up with Arthur Bell in the middle of the meeting.
Oh, gee whiz.
Oh, it was very strange.
Arthur Evans breaks up with Arthur Bell from the podium at
Yes.
a Gay Activist Alliance meeting.
Yeah. But that's what we did at the firehouse. We had meetings. We had committee meetings. I was on the executive committee because how to explain this? Anybody could have a committee with Gay Activist Alliance, but you had to have like 6 active members. My committee, that I was the chairman, was the Unfair Tax Committee. And we used to go after religious organizations that were using their tax-exempt status to lobby against gay rights bills. You're not supposed to be involved in politics. And we had this little angel face, no names. We had this little angel face who we used to send to all these organizations to volunteer. And he was like the first hacker. And he would like get their donor lists. And he would guess who they're paying money to. and we give it to the IRS, and of course the IRS used to blow us off and did nothing. But at least, they were presented with evidence, hard evidence, that these organizations were in violation of their tax-exempt status.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we also dealt with things like getting trying to get government benefits, both state and federal and local, for, gay partners, that kind of thing. None of that came to fruition until many years later, but at least we started it.
You certainly did.
Yeah, and this gave, and we were all libertarians. This was the little libertarian niche, within Gay Activist Alliance.
You weren't socialist leaning.
No, that was up to the agitprop people.
Did you? And this is just a
And
very quick
believe
question.
me, it was not easy being gay and having Tourette's syndrome either. Believe me.
Having Tourette's syndrome?
Yeah, it's worn off over the years. I was one of the lucky ones that worn off. But nobody gave a shit. Not a Gay Activist Alliance, anyway.
Talk about organizing for the first march, and talk about the first march again.
Oh, sure. It was coming up on the first anniversary of the riot, and we decided that we should have a commemoration of that occurrence, so people didn't forget, that people remembered that you could fight back, that you could stand up for yourself and make a difference. So we decided that it should be on the date, which was a Sunday that year, and Agitprop printed up flyers, and we went out and we passed out thousands and thousands of flyers on Christopher Street. Christopher Street, you have no idea what Christopher Street was like back then. From 6th Avenue down to West Street, you couldn't walk on the sidewalks because every gay person on the face of the earth was on Christopher Street. And I eventually lived right there at 16 Christopher Street. But I was living on 20 Cornelia Street back initially, which is in back of the Waverly Theater or whatever, or the IFC Theater now. Yeah, it's like runs like behind, one block between West 4th and Bleecker.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's where I subletted. That's where I sublet from the artist. It was on Cornelia Street because the gallery was downstairs. Anyway, we passed out flyers and passed out flyers and passed out flyers, and we had no idea what the response was going to be. Some people said, nobody's going to come, nobody's going to stick their necks out. And I said, well, it doesn't hurt, it only costs us paper. Well, we got there, and there was like 30 of us, and the police had barricaded Christopher Street. They weren't going to let us through. They were not going to let us march. They were not going to let us leave the village. They were going to keep us in the ghetto. And, that was the end of it. And Jim Owls went to the sergeant who was the head of the police detail and said, we're marching. And he said, we're not going to let you through. He says, well, then you're going to have to club us because we're going. And we decided, well, it was 11 o'clock, it was time to get our asses in gear. And we all got in formation and marched up, we were like right where Village Cigars is, and there used to be an A&P directly across the street. It's now GNC. But then it was an A&P, and there was a Smilers there too. We're going, time to go. And someone started the chant, freedom, gay rights now. And we started to march. And the police just, despite what they said, the police did not stop us. We weren't going to get clubbed. And we started yelling at people to join us. And as we marched up 6th Avenue, every time we turned around, there'd be more and more people behind us. And by the time we got up to Central Park, it was a few thousand people had joined us. And it was thrilling. That's the best word I can say, is that we actually got people to stand up for themselves, to come out in public and stand out for themselves, despite what everybody else was going to say. That was the great part about it, is that people actually said, "Fuck it, I'm going. What's going to happen?" Nothing happened, except that more and more people got involved.
And the scene in Sheep's Meadow, if you could...
It was a being. It was like we had just planned to get up there and then go back down to the village, back down to the firehouse. But there were all these people there. What are we going to do with all these people? And so we just stayed up there, and we played games, and we sang, and people had guitars, and other people were making out, and it was like a being.
It had a hippie feel to it.
Oh, absolutely. This is pure hippiness. Pure hippiness. As a result of that hippie movement. It's like people felt free. They're going to make out in the middle of Sheep's Meadow in Central Park with their boyfriend.
Do you think the hippie counterculture positively affected the gay movement at that point?
Oh, yeah. Well, you asked me that question once on the phone, and I wasn't sure. You asked me if I was counterculture, and I didn't know what that meant, because we were just doing what we were doing. We were just being ourselves. And okay, we all had hair down to our asses, and we all wore big elephant bells and colorful shirts and smoked a lot of pot and did mescaline and partied and screwed like there was no tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, it was like we didn't look at it as being counterculture. We looked at it as doing what we do.
Did you have long hair at the time?
I had gorgeous hair.
How far down did it go?
It was down to here. And I had hair like a Yeti, chestnut brown. And it was thick. A couple of times I actually had people offer me money for my hair. I had gorgeous hair. Now it's just thin and gray,
I tell people, my hair was white, then yellow, blonde, then dirty blonde, then brown, and now I call it rat.
Yeah, this is mousy gray. But I had this gorgeous chestnut blonde and thick. It was like a Yeti. I swear to God, it was thick hair. And someone had once taught me that if you mix lemon juice and water and you spray it in your hair out in the sun, it brings out bronze highlights. And it's true, it does.
I ain't trying. Oh.
Not anymore. You have to have like chestnut. You have to have like brown hair. But my hair was gorgeous, and a beard, a full beard. I had that for a while, and eventually by the time the mid-70s came around, I had to cut back to a handlebar mustache, which I've had ever since. Although I don't do much with it lately, because there's no one around to show it off to. But
what was the relationship between the Gay Activist Alliance and the Gay Liberation Front?
Polite. Minimally polite. We couldn't understand what they were doing. I mean, they weren't accomplishing anything. They were going out and demonstrating. Okay, fine. They went out and they demonstrated for drag queens, which is great. The street drag queens, which is, that was their defender. But they were so obnoxious in their methods. They were alienating more people than they were attracting.
Like what?
Well, it's political correctness was just beginning to rear its ugly head. And we'll get to that. That's why I eventually broke off with the movement after the 4th parade. When it stopped being the 4th March, just before it started being a parade. there were just two left. Like Gay Activist Alliance. It was in our Constitution that we would never, at any point, accept support of, or would we support, any political party or candidate. And GLF was all about the Communist Party and the Socialist Workers' Party and all that stuff. It was my unpleasant duty to tell, what's that cop, the one that they made the movie about him.
Serpico.
Yes, it was my unpleasant duty to have to tell him at a Gay Activist Alliance meeting that we couldn't support his run for Congress.
How come?
Because we would not support any politician for any reason, or any political party for any reason.
And that allowed you to have a broader umbrella of people.
Absolutely.
And that way you could be uni-focused and work on gay rights.
Exactly. It was only gay rights, period.
How did you feel about the GLF trying to make bonds with the Black Panthers and...
I thought it was totally bad news, because then the gay rights movement would be subsumed. The gay rights angle would be subsumed, particularly since the Panthers were such rabid homophobes. You know,
except for Huey Newton.
Please, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's like you're making a deal. It's like Orthodox Jews making a deal with Hitler. You know, No, and the Socialist Workers' Party was always trying to get a foothold in Gay Activist Alliance. Always.
And your feelings at that point were still very anti-communist?
Oh, still are. Still are. That's the only reason I have ever cut off relationships with somebody. It's because he's made the mistake of saying, "Oh, I'm a communist," which is a shame, because there's a guy I used to like very much, a bi guy. I used to like him very, very much, and one day he made the mistake of trying to lecture me on the benefits of communism, and I threw him out of the house, and I never talked to him again. You know, that is my biggest no-no on the face of the earth. Is that because the oppression? I mean, it's bullshit. It's the thugs. They're thugs. And if you don't like it, they shoot you. And your family.
Do you feel any differently about Western European democratic socialism?
Socialism is a joke. It works great until you run out of everybody's money. You know, that's the whole reason why Germany and France are letting in so many. You know, they're desperate to let in all these Muslims coming in. It's not because they're such warm-hearted people and they're welcoming Muslims. It's just that their birth rate has dropped to the point where they can't replace themselves, and the population is getting older and older and older with no young people to replace them. So who's going to support the older people? Who's going to pay the taxes to support the older people? So they're letting in all these Muslims to pay the taxes, so all these old krauts and frogs can, you know, live in their socialist paradise until they finally kick the bucket.
So in those days with the Gay Activist Alliance, that was never, and the Gay Activist Alliance stayed away from any specific affiliation.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. We would go after Democrats as much as we would go after Republicans.
Go
ahead, I'm sorry.
Somebody said that they had, they went to the alternate university where the GLF was.
On 14th Street.
And though he was against the war and everything, he felt very uncomfortable, and he said other people did too when they saw pictures of like Ho Chi Minh or Mao up on the wall. They were like, well, I don't know about all of this.
Yeah,
you know, did you go to the alternate year?
God, no. No.
So you had very strong feelings about the GLF.
absolutely, yeah. No, it's
Especially they got their name from the National Liberation Front.
well, all these little liberation fronts, it was like take your ethnic name liberation front, at that point in history. It's like there were liberation fronts running around all over the place.
Can you remember any zaps?
Oh, God, yeah.
Tell me about a zap.
Let me see.
Your favorite.
My favorite was the one I mentioned, when he took over the city clerk's office.
What happened?
Well, now, don't get me wrong. Why a gay man wants to get married to another gay man is beyond me. I don't understand it. Why a gay person wants to ape a heterosexual relationship leaves me amazed. But fine, I was there for solidarity's sake. We went in with a wedding cake and a coffee urn and coffee and milk and sugar, and we took over the city clerk's office. And we wanted the city clerk to start issuing marriage licenses to gay couples. Well, one of the clerks lost it, called the police, and told the police that we were tearing the place up. Well, the riot police showed up, the tactical police force. They showed up in full, shield, club, and helmet array. And I just turned around, and here's this huge cop behind me, like this, and I got a...
With his fist in the air?
No, with his club in the air.
Club.
And I'm holding up a cup of coffee and a piece of cake, and going, "Hi, would you like some gay wedding cake?" And he realized that there was no riot going on. Nobody was tearing anything up.
Did he take the piece of cake?
No, he didn't take the piece of cake. Not that I saw, anyway.
That's a cute sap, by the way. What year was that?
Oh, 71, 71, 72, 72, 71. All the best zaps were in the early days. There was a zap when we took over the Dick Cavett show in the middle of a taping. Well, he was very snarky about gay people and gay rights. One of our members, should I name? No name. Was a stockbroker. Was friends with someone high up in ABC. So he got a whole block of 50 tickets for us to the Dick Cavett show. So we all went to the Dick Cavett show together. And we sat in the audience, and the thing was, you know what his theme song was? Dick Cavett show. His theme song was from Leonard Bernstein's Candide, "Glitter and Be Gay." Glitter and be gay, da 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 da. That, but jazzed up. We always thought Dick Cavett was gay anyway, just heavily closeted.
He had sex with Janis Joplin.
Why, I'm surprised at her lack of taste. And we'll get to that.
Sorry.
We'll get to that.
Too.
That breaks my heart. Anyway.
Well, he was very nice to her.
Okay. So, right after he comes out, he starts talking to the audience, and we all started blowing our whistles and saying that we're taking over the Dick Cavett show because of his nasty comments about people who are fighting for gay rights, and how dare he do that? What's he going to do? Well, it just there was no taping that night, needless to say. Didn't call the police, I'll give him that much. So we're there and made noise. We made noise for about an hour and we left. But we made our point.
What did the rest of the audience members do when you were doing that?
Well, half of them hated us and the other half of them applauded us. It's about par for the course.